Welcome to Magic.ai, the operating system for hospitality. At Magic, we know an operating system is more than just software and systems. It's about people, because hospitality is nothing without them. So supporting the hospitality community is our number one goal.
I think there needs to be more of a support system. Like, you have to love this business and you have to love every aspect of it, including sharing tribal knowledge on what is successful and also tribal knowledge of what is a failure.
Founded by lifelong experts, we're building the place where everyone in hospitality, from seasoned pros to first-timers, can gather, share, and grow together. Plus, we're crafting scalable tools and AI-supported software to boost your business. Dive into our vibrant community platform packed with meaningful conversations and robust tools and templates designed just for you. Need more? Our custom software solutions have got you covered. From recruiting and staffing to digital playbooks and dashboards, we're working on building a unique hub of resources unlike any other. Magic is your single point of origin for important conversations, accessible tools, valuable insights, and more. Join us at magic.ai. The evolution of hospitality is here.
For me, recruiting is a very proactive process and hiring is sort of a reactive process. You really need to give yourself enough time to find the right people. We see diversity as the culmination of a number of factors, and they are not all race or gender. And so I am trying to find people of different backgrounds, different ethnicities, certainly different genders, but also people with different viewpoints, people who maybe look exactly the same as one another, but come from two very different backgrounds.
Award-winning chef Kevin Gillespie grew up in Locust Grove, Georgia. He owns acclaimed Michelin Guide-recommended Gun Show restaurant and recently opened Nadir in May of 2024. He has published 2 cookbooks, Fire in My Belly and Pure Pork Awesomeness. He co-founded the Defend Southern Food Foundation to provide meals for hungry families near his restaurants. He was a 2022 finalist for the James Beard Foundation's Outstanding Restaurateur Award and was a finalist and fan favorite on Bravo's Top Chef Season 6 and a finalist on Top Chef All-Stars. Chef Kevin was named a 2015 and 2017 semifinalist and 2016 finalist for the James Beard Foundation's Best Chef Southeast Award and has previously been a semifinalist for the Rising Star Chef of the Year Award for 4 consecutive years. Nominated for Food & Wine's People's Best New Chef and named in Forbes 30 Under 30.
The only way you'll ever work somewhere that is limitless is if they also have a limitless budget. The reality is that it is not business at that point if you have a truly limitless budget. I'm just saying that the pursuit of this money that people see, oh my God, you're leaving so much on the table. It's not true. We make almost exactly the same amount of money as we did when we didn't do these things. But what we do have is a much happier and healthier team, including myself. It's incumbent upon me to be happy and healthy as well. I don't need a lot of sleep. Like, I really don't. I'm not a person who sleeps a lot. I never have been. And I think it's only accomplishable because I just don't sleep very much. And so I get more hours in the day. I don't know. That's it. Because it's nothing else. It's certainly not organization or any number of other things. It's just, if you're awake most of the day, you can get a lot of stuff done. So
just time to turn it on and go. Yeah, I woke up myself this morning. Sorry, Caroline. I was just going to say, I woke up myself this morning. Well, so now that school has started again for my 2 guys, it's like it gets everybody back in that habit of trying to get to bed earlier. And so last night we all went to bed at 9:30, which is the first time we've done that in a long time. But I shut up like a rocket at like 4:30. And once I'm up, it's like, forget it. It's like I'm lying there and I'm like, I should really try and go back to sleep. I'm like, nope, let's go. Wake up, make the coffee. Here we go.
Yeah, exactly. My wife could sleep through like 13 alarms. And like I hear like one dog cough at 3 a.m. and I'm like, well, I guess I'm awake now. So yeah, that's my thing.
I'm sorry for both of you. I'm the person I can sleep through just about anything.
Yeah, my sous chef set, I don't even know why this is a thing. She set 7 alarms the other day and slept through. And I was like, how?
That's a hard
Olivia?
sleeper.
I was like, how do you do that? And I was like, what did your husband do? And she was like, well, I guess I had scared him enough into not waking me up. Like that he just didn't come in until at some point he was like, you have to go to work. Like, you know, so, yeah, not me.
I love it.
Okay. So speaking of teams, you have 2 restaurants now and, arguably you can't run a restaurant without a fantastic team behind you or with you. And I'd love to know about your recruitment for, you can speak to it. I know you just opened Nader, so you might have more recent sort of history with that, but we'd love to talk about hiring, finding the right candidates, finding the right cultural fits, training, that kind of stuff. What does that look like for you? Did you take a few people from Gun Show and bring them over to Nader when you were starting? I would love to just know a little bit more about that.
Well, you guys use the right word, which is recruiting. Like, I don't think it's hiring. And I stress that there's a major difference between those two things. For me, recruiting is a very proactive process and hiring is sort of a reactive process. And so I think that when you are getting ready to staff up anything, you really need to give yourself enough time to find the right people. And that's hard to look. It sounds simple to just blurt it out there. But in reality, when you're facing the pressure of getting open and making money, this notion that you're just going to take your time until you find the right folks is probably insane. But I will tell you that I choose to do that. That is what we do. And that is why we never can give like a really firm opening date. A lot of the time is that we are waiting to build the right team. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time and sometimes it takes a little longer than you might want it to. But I feel like the time lost in developing the right people goes a long way to resolving a million other conflicts and issues that will present themselves the moment that you open. And so for me, when we're opening a new restaurant, we look at a couple of things as sort of critically important. The first is I have almost no desire to know where you've worked before. I don't really care where you've worked before. Like your resume means very, very little to me. The first is really just character interview, if you will. And so we ask a lot of questions related to things that have almost nothing to do with work. We're just trying to judge whether you're the kind of person who will consistently be sort of self-policing. Are you the kind of person who is going to become really complacent? Once you do something successfully one time, you think to yourself, well, I did it. I made the finish line. Or are you the kind of person who recognizes that the finish line is a complete fallacy in our industry, that there is no finish line? You have to really like running the race, not getting to the finish line. So we ask a lot of questions to sort of gauge that first piece. And then the second is that we are very, very cognizant of having a diverse team. But I want to clarify that we see diversity as the culmination of a number of factors, and they are not all race or gender related. And so I am trying to find people of different backgrounds, different ethnicities, certainly different genders, but also people with different viewpoints, people who maybe look exactly the same as one another, but come from two very different backgrounds. Because my opinion is that in order for us to build a team that is reflective of where I work, which is in Atlanta, an incredibly diverse city that is made up of people from all over the world, if my team doesn't reflect back our guest makeup, then that's a pretty serious problem for me. And so if I hire a staff that all just looks like me with my background, then I feel like I am quietly going ahead and going ahead and saying to people, this place is for a certain group and it's not for someone else. And so I try to be very meaningfully present in that hiring process, that recruiting process, to ensure that we are bringing on people that reflect back our values, but that also reflect back the values of the city that we live in.
Yeah.
I also think that helps with creativity too, right? People coming from different places. If everyone has the same ideas, or if everyone comes from very similar places, often they have very similar ideas. And if people are coming from different backgrounds, different work experiences, different life experiences, different ethnic experiences, culturally, then it's just all these people bring these wonderful ideas together. They can challenge each other. It's not everyone just saying, yeah, man, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. That's a great idea. It's, well, what about this? What about if we look at it from this perspective, right? Other people's perspectives are so important when developing new concepts that you want to be inclusive and creative in making.
Right. And I agree with you completely on that. But what I will say is that a lot of people aren't comfortable with that. There are a lot of people who in our industry who are really, so maybe it's a sense of like just a lack of self-confidence. I don't know exactly what it's rooted in, but there are a lot of people in this industry who just want it done their way, and they don't want anybody checking them on any of that. They don't actually want to learn and grow and be any better. And I don't mean that as like a condemnation of folks. It's just an observation that I've noticed, that it is an uncomfortable place to be consistently challenged by your team, but it also produces, in my opinion, the best end result. If you can handle it, if you have the maturity and wisdom to be able to handle it and to be able to set sort of guardrails for how you do so in a very professional context, I think you'll end up making something that's exponentially better.
Yeah. And it's interesting. You use the term self-policing, which I guess I would dig into that a little bit and just say that feels to me like self-motivation also, right? And so how do you go about, inspiring these folks? How do you go about ensuring that there's some path for them to understand how important self-motivation is?
Well, I was having this conversation actually with our general manager just a couple of days ago, and I said that my path that I have always chosen to take is a very, what I call battlefield leadership method of being the boss. I grew up in a family of men who were all in the military, and so I think I grew up in a world of a tremendous discipline and accountability. And the version of leadership that I've always gravitated to when I was in their position was wanting to look up and admire someone and sort of a quiet leadership, a person who had the confidence and who had the skills to back up their confidence, but who didn't feel the need to exert their position as the leader very frequently. And so I've certainly emulated that version myself. And so that means that I prep alongside them, literally right next to them. During service, I don't just expedite or walk around and point at things. I regularly swap myself out for one of my line cooks and allow them to do a different job, and I will work their station for the night, not to show them up, but to show that I still see myself as a very collaborative and equal standing member of the team. And for that reason, I almost never have to be the boss. It's not that I am not. It's just that I don't have to flex that and prove it to people. They know who the boss is. And so that's one method. And then the other, I think, is that I like to believe that I show them what it looks like to be a person who is extremely self-motivated and self-governing. And so I am honest about the mistakes that I make. I don't try to quietly make them and push them under the rug where they don't see them. If I do something, maybe I even shine a light on when I make mistakes, because I'm shining a light, hopefully, on the process of correcting your errors and moving forward. And so I think elements like that are what you need, especially when you're working with younger cooks, for me at least, because they need to understand that this industry, while on paper, you've read about how it's this place where people are just yelling and screaming at each other all the time. That is completely uncondoned behavior in my restaurants. And so they're not going to see that whip cracking. So they need to see something else instead. And that something else instead is a group of collaborative individuals who are always going to be pushing themselves as hard as anyone else could push them.
Yeah. Yeah. And we used to say in my restaurant that accountability was a product of transparency, right? So you create those environments where people feel like they can contribute to the conversation and they're involved on more than just the level of, brunoising shallots, but, where their ideas are considered and, right, you bring them into the conversation. I feel like that in itself kind of creates some of that accountability, right? It starts to grow a team who's looking around at each other and holding each other accountable too.
Right. And I think that to add to that piece, the other thing that we stress to them is the flip side of the accountability coin is you are not simply making your life inconvenient today by not showing up at the right time or by not giving it your all. Like, you're not working in a silo. Your lack of effort and focus is impacting everyone else. And that is a very selfish way to live. And so we're asking and sort of saying to each other, here's the thing. You can come to work every day and only care about you, which means that there is no safety net and it's just you. Or you can come to work every day and care about everyone else and not really care about you. And if your teammates are reciprocating that, you have dozens of people looking out for you. That seems to be a much better deal I think your day is going to be easier and you're probably going to be more successful in that method, but you have to be willing to let go of this selfishness that is sort of inherent in us as people.
Yeah. And it's funny because we say these things and I guess a little bit standing outside, they sound a little grandiose in some ways, right? Like they sound a little idealistic. They are. And I think these are all the types of environments and spaces that we want to create as leaders and operators. But I would say in the same breath, the workplace has changed dramatically in the last 5 years, right?
Right.
And it's more, I mean, even just from an operations perspective, right? It's more expensive to employ teams than ever, with employee benefits and compensation packages, and even down to state mandates now. How do you navigate all of these tough challenges in your day-to-day operations when you're trying to build that type of a supportive environment?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing that I would say is that when people hear this and they think maybe that's a little grandiose, maybe that's a little far-fetched, my opinion is that there's a difference between being obtuse and being grandiose. And I don't think there's anything wrong with shooting for the stars and dreaming for every day to be working a little bit closer towards this sort of unattainable perfection. To me, the effort is 100% worth it. And so I think that you do it because it's worth doing, not because you expect to see some sort of magic result or find yourself on the cover of a magazine or write a self-help book, Now, that said, the challenges are real and they're very present. And what I tell myself often, and what I then tell my team, is that I try to approach all of this through the lens of a person who is just very rooted to the realities that we deal with every day, meaning that I have to pick my battles and I have to consider where we get the most value for digging our heels in to, and doing, quote, the right thing, and where perhaps we need to learn to live with an alternative reality that we don't love as much, but that is just a necessity. And so, practical versions of that can include, like, I would love to pay everyone tremendous amounts of money because I think what they do is massively undervalued. We do the best we can. We pay above our peers and we try really hard. But I'm also realistic in knowing that I can't put the business in danger of closing because we're being maybe too generous. In that scenario, you are just being sort of willfully obtuse. Another example of this, I would say, is when it comes down to understanding what the restaurant can and can't afford to do. I was saying to one of my sous chefs this morning that the only way you'll ever work somewhere that is limitless is if they also have a limitless budget. And the reality is that that's just not business. It is not business at that point if you have a truly limitless budget. The reality is that everybody should have to work inside some specific constraints. And so, yes, we would love to buy this thing. It'd be so cool if we could buy this new blah, blah, blah. And maybe we can at some point, but not today. And those are sort of like very simple versions of this. But as I remind everyone on a nearly daily basis, I'm sure they're tired of hearing this, is that I have an obligation to the business first and foremost. And that doesn't mean that I don't care about you. It in fact means I care so much about you that I have a responsibility to ensure that we're open tomorrow and the next day and the next month and the next year, because that is the most helpful thing I can do to ensure your success as a person, is that you don't lose your job.
The fact that you were having that conversation with your sous chef is awesome. And I wish that every chef and operator kind of had that perspective, right? Do you find yourself creating more space to have business specific conversations with your leaders within your establishments? Is that something that you consciously do, or does it just do moments provide themselves? We're like, hey, listen, I want to talk to you about this.
I would say it's both. I will say that we are very, very transparent with regards to the performance of the business. We started doing that, 10 plus years ago, because I wanted people to, I think 10 years ago, I was a little bit concerned with this notion that seems to exist where people think that because I'm some sort of celebrity, at least in their mind, I'm a celebrity, that must mean that I am also very wealthy. And I'm like, those two things are not, they don't necessarily have anything to do with each other.
100%.
I have a very comfortable life, but that is largely because I have a spouse who is an incredibly successful professional. So that is more, if it was just me, I'd be like, hey guys, check out my studio apartment, and spin the camera around a little bit here.
Shout out to spouses everywhere. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Mine too.
Right. That is the whole reason the dream is a reality, is to be very candid. That said, we started being very transparent, not because I wanted to defend the fact that I am actually not making, like, paying myself some insane amount of money, but because I felt like it was really important for the team to understand the decision making. And back to what I was just saying before, I always thought it was really hard for them to understand why I told them no if they didn't understand what we were really doing, because too many people inside the industry have a role to play, but they are not looking at the big picture. And so in their purview, they might see nothing but success. If your job is just to be a server, for example, and you're making $500 and $600 a night in tips, you must extrapolate that out to think, well, the business must be making a tremendous amount of money as well. And that isn't necessarily true. And so we've always been very forthcoming in that piece of information. Now, when it comes to discussing sort of the subtleties of business, we do frankly leave that upon our staff to how do I phrase this? In their review process, we discuss goals that they have and desires that they have to better themselves as a working professional. And if their strength is not in the business side of it, we don't push that, to be honest with you. This is something that maybe is a little different for me than it is for others, is that I want to make you the best version of you that you want to be, not that I want you to be. And so if your goal in your tenure with me is to become an exceptional cook, and that is it, that is what we will focus on. If your time with me is to learn how to inevitably become an owner-operator, we will have very different conversations with one another. And so I try to take into account what they want to grow up to be, as it were, quote unquote, rather than what I think they should want to grow up to be.
Do you find that a lot of the people who work for you move through the restaurant in different ways? I know you talked about sometimes someone hops off the line to do a different job and you hop on for the night. Do you find that sort of moving around the restaurant helps them understand the business even better, as well as growing their skills?
Well, the short answer is that sometimes. I wish it was always. But again, what I've learned is that some people are a little bit more capable of seeing the bigger picture than other folks are. What I think that it does is that it gives them a much clearer sense of perspective and respect for their colleagues. And so that is my sort of number one goal. It's not that they learn every facet of the business. It's that they learn to respect someone along their team who is doing something that they have not themselves done. And so what I don't like, what I've always really tried to dismantle inside my businesses is the line, the sort of quiet line that exists between the front and the back of the house. And so we try to sort of separate out the job you do with the value you bring to the business, and recognize that those are very different things, and that we don't need to fall in this sort of never-ending cycle of being frustrated as back of the house people because we work so much and the front of the house doesn't work as many hours as we do, and somehow equate that to meaning that we are more important than they are. And that's just that fallacy has gotten us nowhere. And maybe that's actually probably not even true. It has gotten us somewhere. It's gotten us to a really dysfunctional place. And for me, I try to make sure that doesn't happen. And I have found that the best way to do that personally is to sort of mix things up and let people live in someone else's shoes, even if it's just for a day or two. I feel like it does a lot to help that.
And you blur the lines a little bit, right? Like
much so.
Gun Show, if I'm not mistaken, will have cooks who will come to the table and present the food and talk about the food, right?
Right, absolutely. Gun Show is the line is completely blurred. It would be almost impossible for the guests to really figure out what a person's role is in the restaurant, because the cooks are in fact serving their own food. The service staff is in fact the ones who you will see behind the kitchen line sweeping and mopping the floors and scrubbing equipment even. And the way we approach it is that there is a total amount of work that must be done today, and we will divide it up amongst all of us without any particular concern for what your quote job is. Our job is to do it.
It seems like there's a real intentionality there.
Very much so.
Right?
Yeah, there was. It was that my desire was to find a way to sort of reestablish this notion of us being a singular team. I thought about it again, very much like a sports team, and this idea that the people who play offense and the people who play defense aren't at odds with each other. They are attempting to do their best version so that the other one can do their best version, because that's how you win the game. And so if this thing is a game, which it probably is about as close to a game as anything else, the way we win it is by being a fully functioning team. It's not by having these sort of weird things that have existed for generations now, where the two teams can't seem to get on the same page, can't seem to agree with each other. And so it was there for that. It is also present at Gun Show, because Gun Show is literally rooted in transparency down to the point of almost like obsessively transparent. You can see everything in the restaurant. There are only the outside walls. There are no other walls.
There's no hiding. There's no hiding.
The walk-in cooler's in the middle of the dining room. So it's like, there's no hiding. And so you should be able to see everything. And my feeling was always that as a guest, if I was sitting there and I was watching a team who appeared to be working incredibly collaboratively with one another and in support of each other, I always felt like that would make me as a guest feel like this was a better place. It would just give me a sense that this place is special and unique.
Wow, it really does sound like Gun Show is a special place.
For better or worse.
Does, yeah. I think for better. I think for sure. It sounds incredibly special. You seem to care a lot about the people who work for you and work with you on both of your teams. And these are high stress environments, no matter how supportive or lack of, you talked about lack of yelling and that kind of stuff in your kitchen. I love that. How do you balance, or how do you help your employees balance the high stress environment, the long hours, with taking care of their mental health, their physical health, being there for the people in their lives, their families? What is that like for you as a leader?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. We go a long way towards this, in my opinion. So the first is that we have a 4-day work week. We are only open 4 days a week at all of our businesses. We made a conscientious decision to do this to ensure that people had enough time away from work to realistically live the life that they needed to. And that meant actually stepping back and asking yourself, is 2 days off enough to get life done? Knowing how hard, knowing how hard we work. And it isn't.
Seven days isn't enough time to get life done.
Right.
Exactly. Let's be honest.
Right. You're right. You're absolutely right. But we were able to sort of break it down and say, okay, a person needs this. They need a recuperation day, like just from the physical reality of this business. They need another day to be able to get things in their life done that require you to do them during the 9 to 5 hours that are so challenging for those of us who work in our industry.
Yeah.
And then they deserve a day for themselves. And so it doesn't matter what they do on that day. Hopefully they do something fun, or if they need to do more chores, fine. But they choose. And so I felt like that was the first step, is that we had to get comfortable with making less money because we deserved that time away.
Yeah.
We also have dedicated closures every year where we go on vacation and everyone is paid. And so they're coming alongside your normal days off. You have time at the holidays. We are not open on New Year's Eve. We are with our families on New Year's Eve.
That's wild.
And I know that is I know that is insane to people in our industry. Why would you give up that money? Because money is not that important. I know that this is like, everybody's going to go, but Kevin, you live in a nice... Look, I'm not saying it isn't anything. I'm just saying that the pursuit of this money that people see, where they think we must be, oh my God, you're leaving so much on the table. I'll show you the books. It's not true. We make almost exactly the same amount of money as we did when we didn't do these things. But what we do have is a much happier and healthier team, including myself. Yeah. It's incumbent upon me to be happy and healthy as well.
Yeah, it's like the argument of not just what is the revenue, but what is the cost of that revenue.
Correct.
Right?
Exactly right. Yes, exactly.
To you and your team.
Correct. And I am a person who has well-documented health issues. I am not a man who is perfectly healthy. I have some struggles that I still deal with every day. I went through 5 years of cancer treatment, and I still deal with it I have a standing doctor's appointment every week for the rest of my life. And so I set limitations for me. And then it feels only appropriate to give everyone on my team the benefit of those same limitations. Why is that so crazy? It's not this notion that I've somehow grown beyond the responsibility of, they're like, well, you're the boss. You can come and go when you want. I don't see it that way. I see it as I am the boss. It is my responsibility to set the standard. And so I make the standard one I can live up to. and then everybody else. It's really easy to hold everyone accountable to that, following that, because it isn't a hypocrisy. They get to see you hopefully thrive. And then they also get a boss who is extremely honest and direct with them and is willing to help them through their challenges in life, And again, that's part of our compensation package, for example, is that we talk to you about what is important to you. Do you need medical benefits or do you not need them? Maybe your spouse carries them. What do you need? Do you want to go back to school? Like, I can help you with that too. Like, and we find a way, again, to build the best version of you that you want to be, not that I want you to be.
God. Kevin, you sound, truly like an incredible leader. Honestly, it sounds just fantastic. I just think
that I just try really hard. And again, I don't always get it right. But I think my team is willing to give me the benefit of the doubt because they know that I will always work to get it right. Whether I do the first time or not is not particularly relevant.
Right. And then they know that if they make mistakes along the way, that they know to come forward and say, I've made a mistake and how can we fix this? Let's find a solution, instead of that sort of shame that we can often feel when we make a mistake and we want to hide it from other people or not tell them. But if you're, standing up and saying, I made this mistake, this is how I fixed it, this is how I think, or let's talk about it as a group. How are we going to, cross this bridge? It's transparency and vulnerability as a human too, Right.
I told someone the other day, they were talking about one of their coworkers who wasn't succeeding at the level that we might want them to. And I felt like they were implying that perhaps we needed to move on past them. And I said, I don't fire people for making mistakes. I don't let people go for not being the best version of themselves they can be. I do that when they stop wanting to care about the mistakes they made and when they stop wanting to work on being better. Until that point, the responsibility is on me to help you resolve the issues that you've been having to get you to the place that you need to be. And frankly, it's upon your teammates and colleagues to help lift you up as well. This goes back into our sentiment that if this person is failing next to you and you know that, then why are you letting them fail in the first place? Like, I don't do that. Like, the way I see this is that there is no room for any of us to truly fail when we have 30-something other people looking after our best interests at all times. And so, to your point specifically about mental health, I think that is one of the things that we have done that is the most impactful towards mental health, is fostering an environment where people do not feel alone in their challenges and troubles, where they do in fact believe that while they are at work, that the stresses of work will be shouldered not just by them, but by everyone collectively. And I like to believe that is something that when they leave work, that they are armed with a tool that can carry forward into the real world to help them be able to manage the stresses of that life as well.